In the late 1800s and early 1900s, our country's cities were growing at a very rapid pace, creating the need for large, publicly funded infrastructure projects like roads, schools, and bridges. Some of these projects were literally the talk of the town. They were highly publicized, critiqued, and commented upon in local newspapers. They were celebrated with extravagant opening ceremonies, including parades, marching bands, speeches by the mayor, and literally thousands of citizens attending. But over time, these projects lose their original shine, and generations later, they are just one more thing that we utilize in our daily lives without realizing that each one of these projects has a story to tell. In this video, I'm going to tell the story of one of those highly celebrated public projects, the almost 100-year-old Ironwood Bridge in both South Bend and Mishawaka, Indiana. The public was proud of large projects like the Ironwood Bridge as they symbolized growth, prosperity, and an increased connection to commerce and other communities. And by telling the story of these public projects, you can truly gain a much larger understanding of the times when they were built. So, I hope in this video that you not only learn about the ups and downs and collaboration between cities to build the Ironwood Bridges during the early 1900s, and yes, you heard that, plural, bridges, but I also hope that by learning about its story, you learn more about South Bend and Mishawaka's story during that time, a time of growth, prosperity, and optimism towards our future. In the early 1900s, the towns of South Bend, Mishawaka, and River Park all bordered near the mighty St. Joe River. River Park wasn't annexed into South Bend until 1910, and Ironwood wasn't even called Ironwood yet. South of the river, it was called Ernsberger Street, and north of the river, it was called 6th Street and then 22nd Street, prior to being named Ironwood. As the area got more inhabited, the need for a bridge was evident. And it's not like you can hop in your minivan and zip across town to the nearest bridge. And if there was a bridge, it might not have been too reliable, like the wooden Logan Street Bridge that was built in the early 1900s that literally fell into the mighty St. Joe. There was ferry service nearby to Springbrook Park, but I'm sure folks grew tired of taking that. And on the flip side, I'm sure the owner of Springbrook Park wanted a bridge there as well, to make it easier for people to get into his park. Then, in 1904, there was hope. The idea of a bridge at Ernsberger Street was soon to be a reality, and surprisingly, it was all set into action by the citizens of South Bend wanting a new Jefferson Street bridge near downtown, 2.5 miles down the river from Ernsberger Street. Let me explain. As you'll soon learn, the old iron Jefferson Street Bridge had quite the journey since it was built in 1881. They didn't call it Jefferson Boulevard yet, just Jefferson Street. And at the time, the iron Jefferson Street Bridge was the finest in the state. And you have to believe that because good judges said so. Well, the finest iron bridge in the state only lasted a little bit more than 20 years, because in 1904, to accommodate the growing downtown area, the city planned to replace the iron bridge with a much fancier, larger, concrete arched Jefferson Street Bridge. But the iron Jefferson Street Bridge was only 20 years old, and again, good judges once said it was the finest in the state. So the question was, what to do with that bridge? Today, we'd probably scrap the metal and think nothing of it. But for the next 20 years or so, this little old iron Jefferson Street Bridge will have quite a little journey and will stir up quite a bit of drama, as the decision to replace a bridge in one community would have a ripple effect on 3 different communities, 2.5 miles down the river. Because the city of South Bend listened to its citizens and also those in neighboring River Park and Mishawaka, as it was decided that the old Jefferson Street Bridge would be moved to Ernsberger Street, As soon as construction of the new concrete Jefferson Street Bridge was complete, the folks in the area were absolutely elated. But they'd have to wait, as that is a few years and a lot of work down the line. When I say a lot of work, get this. Before any work could be started on the new beautiful concrete Jefferson Street Bridge, they first had to reroute traffic and move the old iron bridge 76 feet north so they could continue using it. And this included rerouting the streetcar tracks. This is 1905. I'm sure not an easy task at that time. As you can see in this picture, looking north, the arches of the new Jefferson Street Bridge are being built. You can also see the old iron bridge that had to be floated to that point to reroute traffic and continue its use. I'm sure seeing that in the paper excited folks near Ernsberger Street, as they knew once the new Jefferson Street Bridge was done, they'd get their very own bridge. But they'd have to wait, as there was much drama with building the Jefferson Street Bridge. Many delays in construction, including having to rebuild a large portion of it. The newspaper even poked fun at the workers, stating that they were on strike, lounging at Howard Park because of how long it was taking. The drama wasn't just near Jefferson Street, however, as there was quite a debate near Ernsberger Street where to actually put that old iron bridge once they actually got it. Remember, River Park was its own town at this time and wouldn't become a part of South Bend for another 4 or 5 years. Ernsberger Street, future Ironwood, was the dividing line between Portage and Penn Township, South Bend and Mishawaka. So wherever they put the bridge, it would take all three entities and the county all working together. It was initially decided that the bridge would be placed at Ernsberger Street, the township line, as the county would have to help foot the bill and part of the road was in unincorporated parts of the area. But River Park folks wanted the bridge at current-day 26th Street, which was then Center Street, smack dab in the middle of their little town. But ultimately, a deal was struck. The Indiana Railway Company, who owned Springbrook Park south of the river, obviously had a vested interest in this project. They said they'd help pay to move the bridge to the Ernsberger Road site, which was literally right next to the park. The caveat was that if a streetcar was ever put on the bridge, they would have exclusive rights to it. So all was good. The site was selected, a contractor was named to move the bridge, the new Jefferson Street Bridge was done, and folks near the township line were going to get this bridge. But even a year later, in 1907, they still didn't have their bridge, and they were hot, complaining that the old iron bridge was literally laying in a pile in the exact same spot as the day it was moved. Well, eventually, the old iron Jefferson Street Bridge was built at Ernsberger Street. This colorized aerial is looking west over Springbrook Park, soon to be named Playland Park, and it's zooming in on the Ernsberger Street Bridge, which again was the former Jefferson Street Bridge. Here is another colorized aerial of Springbrook Park looking northeast, and you again can see the old Ernsberger Street Bridge. I want to point out here that the old iron Ernsberger Street Bridge was not exactly where the current Ironwood Bridge is at. It was just west of it. Check out this 1938 aerial of the current Ironwood Bridge, only a decade after it was built. You could see it had to be rerouted from the original bridge route, which we'll learn more about in a few minutes. Here is an aerial from the present day that shows where Ironwood used to be. In this 1924 picture, they are standing on the old Ernsberger Bridge looking north towards Pleasant Street. Keep that car in mind for a moment. This picture from present day is looking south on Pleasant Street. That car that was in the previous picture is where those two smaller houses are at today. And this house here is still standing. Matter of fact, What I believe to be the foundation of the original Ernsberger Street Bridge is still in the backyard of one of the houses there. Check out this groundbreaking on-the-scene reporting. Standing on the Ironwood Bridge, looking north, pan to the left just a little bit, and you can see the foundation of the original Ironwood Bridge, which was the old Jefferson Blvd Bridge. After all of the drama behind where to place the bridge, after all of the waiting for it, the folks finally had their bridge, and it was utilized daily. And it had to have been a key factor in helping the area around it grow. North of the river, River Park's exponential growth led it to be annexed into South Bend, and south of the river, Springbrook Park continued to grow into an extremely popular attraction. But remember, the Ernsberger Street Bridge was a hand-me-down iron bridge from Jefferson Street, built over 20 years prior in 1887. So less than 10 years in, they were already having issues. They had to close it in 1916 for repairs. Then in 1922, a week before the Interstate Fair at Springbrook Park, the county engineer deemed the bridge unsafe until further notice. Then on May 18, 1925, only 3 years later, the Tribune published an article that basically stated, enough is enough. It was time for a new bridge, as this old iron bridge was just too unsafe. And that article was prophetic, because only 8 days later, the Tribune reported that Mrs. Ethel Dawson, with her 8-month-old baby, had slipped on a loose plank. She was catapulted towards the river, and she had to save her baby from near death by grabbing him by his clothing, literally was dangling above the river. Conversation of a new bridge continued over the next couple of years, and most articles commented on the cooperation between South Bend and Mishawaka on building the bridge, since it was on the dividing line between the two towns. But more drama. In April of 1927, just as they were voting to build a new Ernsberger Street Bridge, big money stepped in and said, whoa, whoa, whoa. If you are going to spend resources on a bridge, we think that you need to build this bridge a little bit to the west, at Harriet Street and Klein Street, which we know today as Twickenham. Look at all those big names. Erskine, two Studebakers, and other real estate men wanted to use its resources to build there, because the Sunnymead area was being built up at the north and Twickenham Hills to the south. The bridge would definitely help their investments prosper by allowing folks to cross the river there. But ultimately, a year later, both bridges were approved to be built, and in May of 1928, the contract was awarded to build a brand new, handsome, open-arch concrete bridge at Ernsberger Street. Nothing happens in isolation, however, so the building of this much larger, grander Ernsberger Street Bridge was a part of the area's larger vision of growth, and that growth included planning for the automobile, because remember, at that point, a good amount of city roads were constructed for horse and buggies. To plan for the growth of the automobile, cities crafted master plans that included larger thoroughfares to make it easier for cars to get to their destinations faster and safer. The Ernsberger Street Bridge and the roads leading up to it were included in a 1924 road plan for the city. The vision was for that street to be a main north and south thoroughfare. But at that time, the road was so disjointed and you didn't even know what to call it. It was called Ernsberger Street south of the river. Then after you crossed that old hazard of an iron bridge, north of the river, you had to turn right onto Pleasant Street before turning left onto 22nd Street, or also called 6th Street. If you continued driving north, there were dangerous jogs at Mishawaka Avenue and also Jefferson Blvd. So the construction of this bridge was not made in isolation. Again, It was part of the city's master plan to have Ernsberger Street be a main north and south drag through town. And they moved fast building the new bridge. I mentioned in May of 1928 they awarded the contract. By July of 1928, only 2 months later, there were already pictures in the South Bend Tribune of it being built. This pic here is looking southeast. Martin's Supermarket would be at the top there now. And you could see the old Ernsberger Street Bridge, which was also the old Jefferson Street Bridge as well. This picture is looking in the same direction, southeast, and might have even been taken from the old Iron Ernsberger Street Bridge. This picture is from November of that year. I surmise it was taken from Playland Park, and it is looking northeast. But you know there had to be a bit more drama before the bridge was done. In February of 1929, the Tribune reported that there was a crack in the new Ironwood Bridge, and it goes to show how big this was at the time. The Tribune noted that many people came out to see the crack in the bridge after reading about it in the paper. But it was a whole bunch of hype for nothing. Turns out they were just expansion joints meant to be there. Side note, these articles about the crack in the bridge is also the first time that I saw the bridge called Ironwood, so they must have renamed Ernsberger Street and 22nd Street at some point in late 1928 or early 1929. After all the drama, all of the debate, the new Ironwood Bridge was complete and a date was set for the dedication, including both South Bend and Mishawaka residents and notable community members. The paper noted it was to be the scene of ceremony and frolic as a parade was planned, followed by a dance right on the bridge. Just by reading about the dedication festivities, you can tell that this was a huge deal. I mean, a parade of over 200 cars followed a route through Mishawaka and South Bend for a total of almost 11 miles. Once the 11-mile parade was done, 1,500 people met on the actual bridge, and the ceremony opened up with 400 children from Nooner Junior High singing America. Then the town's mayors and councilmen gave speeches. J.B. Whitwer, a councilman from River Park, said, "The part in history that this bridge will play in bringing South Bend and Mishawaka closer together has never been rivaled." Mayor Montgomery of South Bend said, "This street is going to mean more to South Bend and Mishawaka than most people can conceive of, and this bridge is going to mean more to the two cities than most people can imagine." All of this was followed up with a street dance with an orchestra at each end of the bridge that lasted from 8 until 11 at night. I found a few more interesting articles about the new Ironwood Bridge from following years. You could see the Ironwood Bridge in the background there, as in 1937, a stuntman flaunted death by plunging a car into the river. I found out that they used to have boat races on the mighty St. Joseph River in the 1940s, and they would set up bleachers on the Ironwood Bridge. An article noted that a total of 7,000 spectators witnessed one of the races. In conclusion, I hope the next time you zip down the Ironwood Bridge, you remember a little bit about its history and how its story is a lot deeper than just concrete arches and asphalt. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to check out other Round the Bend content as well on Twitter, Facebook, and definitely check out our podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.